Donald Trump's endorsement has failed once again to get a Republican elected in a very red state because with 51.3% of the vote, incumbent Democratic Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards has been reelected, defeating the Republican challenger Eddie Rispone, or Rispone, I'm not exactly sure how it's pronounced, winning by roughly 40,000 votes or about 2.5 percentage points. There are many reasons why this is an interesting race. We will talk about a variety of them here. Number one is that, again, this is a red state. This is a red state that will have a Democratic governor now who could, depends what happens in 2020, overlap with a Democratic president, depending on what happens in November, and might actually be able to do some good things and maybe move Louisiana to the left. But we will have to think about whether John Bel Edwards is actually the type of Democrat that wants to move Louisiana to the left, and I'll get to that later. But just as importantly, as we head towards 2020, is the consideration of the Trump effect. This is another Republican in Louisiana whose association with Trump, whose rallying with Trump, whose endorsement from Trump didn't get him the victory, even in a very red state. So we are very quickly learning that red state governors may be worse off with Donald Trump's endorsement, which Eddie Rispone had. So two important things here. Number one, do not let Trump now revise history by pretending that he wasn't heavily promoting the Republican challenger, because Trump went to Louisiana. He rallied for the Republican. Trump was very involved, and Trump just lost on this one. Now, on the other hand, it is really important, and I alluded to this before, to understand that John Bel Edwards, the incumbent now reelected governor in Louisiana, this is not a progressive Democrat or even anything remotely close to approximating a progressive Democrat. John Bel Edwards is against abortion. John Bel Edwards is for more guns in more places. John Bel Edwards signed a crazy restrictive anti-abortion bill this year in Louisiana. So in a sense, winning by 2.5 percentage points against a candidate that had Trump support is not as notable as it would be if this were an actual progressive, because John Bel Edwards is no progressive. This is about as centrist or even right-wing as a Democrat ever really is. We could, talk about Joe Manchin, who's the Democratic senator from West Virginia, who is the most conservative Democrat in the Senate. Maybe John Bel Edwards is even more to the right of Joe Manchin. You could probably make a strong case of that. We'd have to look issue by issue. But a loss is a loss for Donald Trump. And that's really the issue as we go forward. An endorsement from Donald Trump, support from Donald Trump, Trump rallying with you. It's not enough even to get you a win in many red states. And that could affect not only Donald Trump in 2020, might be a signal about Trump's 2020 reelection attempt, but it could also be interesting in terms of the key Republican senators that we are trying to push out in 2020. A few weeks ago, I told you that although I still think it is unlikely that Democrats take the Senate in 2020, I think it's more likely in 2022. I did revise the strength of that statement. I do believe that there is a path to Democrats taking the Senate in 2020. And one of the things that would very much help Democrats take the Senate in 2020 is if Donald Trump's support becomes increasingly toxic. And we'll continue to follow that. The other funny thing about this is how Republicans have just wound themselves into a knot around this Louisiana gubernatorial race. They were confident going in because, like I said, Louisiana is very red. And before the election, many of these Trumpists were saying, this is going to show you the power of Trump. This win, this removal of the incumbent Democratic governor by Eddie Rispone, I wish I knew how to pronounce it, is going to show you how Donald Trump is very, very strong. His endorsement, his support, they're going to knock out the incumbent Democratic governor. They lost. And now that they lost, they are pretending Trump was never really that involved. And anyway, this guy was a bad candidate. It's not Trump's fault. This has nothing to do with Trump whatsoever. Trump flew there and held his crazy nationalist rallies, mostly, of course, to feed his own ego. I don't know that it was really to take out the Democratic governor. It was probably because Trump wanted to get in front of a crowd that was once again handpicked brown nosers, because it ended very poorly for him when he went to the World Series game, when he went to the UFC match. He wanted one of these crazy, sycophantic crowds, but it did not ultimately help the Republican win. So that's going to be a super interesting narrative to follow into the 2020 elections. and we will be following it for sure. Let me know what you think about this. Reply on YouTube if you are watching on YouTube. Send me a tweet at Pakman if you are on Twitter. I will remind you, on Black Friday, I think, or Thanksgiving Day, we are going to be sending out an email with the last major membership drive of 2019. If you've been thinking about becoming a member and supporting the show, but you want to do it at a massive discount, get on our newsletter by going to davidpakman.com. Many hundreds of you have done this since I mentioned it last week. Sign up, and then on Thanksgiving Day or Black Friday, you will get an email which will say, this is the coupon code you were waiting for. It will be a beautiful, glorious thing. That I can assure you. Get on the newsletter. We will take a quick break and be back right after this. A very, very busy news weekend. The David Pakman Show is possible thanks to sponsors like Vincero Watches, giving everyone in our audience 15% off your entire order when you go to davidpakman.com/watch. I just got a couple of new watches from these guys, and I love them. I got the Kairos limited release Gold Reserve set, which is very cool. I love the white face, the simple band, and everything about it. It's a perfect size for my wrist. Really great choice. I also picked out the Vincero Bellwether in silver and white. And what I love about this one, number one, the Roman numeral at the top of the face. The white face is great. This is a chronograph model, and I love the blue leather band. It's just a really nice looking watch. Everybody who sees me wear this one always asks about it. What I like about Vincero as a watch brand is you're getting quality, and you're getting a watch where it's clear as soon as you open the box that a lot of care and artisanship went into the design and the way that the watch is put together. I'm not interested in paying thousands of dollars for a watch when I can get one that's reasonably priced and looks just as nice and has terrific build quality. And that's exactly what Vincero is in the business of doing, putting a ton of craftsmanship into their watches, making them available for $150, $200. You really can't go wrong. Check them out at davidpakman.com/watch. Support the people who support our show, and you'll save 15% when you use that link.